what the Veda says is that action itself cannot remove suffering. It can remove pain. It can remove relative suffering, of course. But the thing with action is every time you apply an action, what you're really doing is you're solving a relative problem, right? And that's okay. But when you solve a relative problem, what happens then? A new problem comes up, right? A new kind of psychological issue comes up. So what an action can do is it can purify the mind, which is necessary. It can also purify the heart, which is also necessary. It can reach from here to there. But you can also reach mentally. You can, reach a different state, a state of mind. That's also an action. However, it cannot remove that beginningless ignorance, because ignorance is what produces that suffering. And any forms of suffering, if you look at your life, is always a product, as I said, of not knowing the facts. So if you don't know, for example, how to repair a car, right, then no matter what you do, no matter what action that you put into the car repair, it's not going to repair the car because you don't know how to repair the car. So what do you have to do? You have to find out how to repair what is wrong in the first place. And that requires research. That requires like looking into different components. So it's the same thing with you. Your mind is like a car. And until I find out what is that bottom core, what do I even need to look at, then no amount of action is going to help me because I'm not looking at the right part that needs to be fixed. Furthermore, Vedanta says that meditation also cannot remove that suffering, because meditation, on one hand, while it can produce phenomenal states of mind, it can definitely help you with making, that mind very sattvic and composed and calm throughout the day. We're not discarding meditation. We're just saying that meditation itself cannot produce what we call, knowledge or removing of ignorance. If it could, then this would be as simple as telling you, close your eyes, take a deep breath, focus somewhere, Ajna chakra maybe, 10 minutes, breathe, pranayama, open your eyes, and everyone would have a complete reboot of life. Things will be clear, and from then on, you would not have any more problems. But how many of us have meditated before? Cool. Okay. No doubt, everyone. And how many of us can testify that meditation has some benefits? 100%. How many of us can say that your meditation has caused you to no longer seek? That means you meditated once and you woke up and things were 100% clear and you stopped being, a seeker from that moment. Only one thumb down. So, see, this is not an accident. So if I asked a lot more people than, that we have in this class, it will be the same answer. So meditation on one hand has benefits, but on the other hand, you will come out of meditation and then you will say, I have to now meditate again. Also, it says that devotion itself cannot remove ignorance. Now, in fact, the word devotion, Bhakti-Yoga, or even Raja Yoga. See, Raja Yoga in the modern world is called meditation, dhyanam. But Bhakti Yoga is what we say in the modern world is necessary for those emotionally predisposed minds. So if you're emotional in nature, if you like more kind of simple language, you're still, in your kind of simple, I don't want, a lot of logics. I just want simplicity. Give me something that's easy to understand. Give me stories. Give me something that's kind of Bhagavatam kind of material. Then we say for those ones, you need Bhakti Yoga. However, Bhakti Yoga is a modern invention, because according to chapter 3, verse 3, Krishna said, at the time of creation of the universe, I only created two paths for us. And they are the path of Karma Yoga and the path of knowledge. So then where does Bhakti Yoga stand? Because there's a lot of Bhakti practices, so you have to now put it somewhere. Well, if you look at Bhakti, or even let's look at Karma Yoga, and then we'll answer where does Bhakti stand. Can you perform any kind of devotion, any kind of work, any kind of pursuit of truth, unless you have a certain reverence for the truth? Would you pursue the truth unless you had reverence for the truth? Would you pursue or want to know about the nature of the Lord and bringing Lord into your life unless you have some form of faith or a little bit of that, right, reverence or devotion towards the Lord? Would you? Would you do anything in your life if you didn't have any form of devotion for it? No. So you can see that any pursuit worth pursuing is always coming with devotion. So devotion is not a separate path. Devotion or bhakti is an expression of your love towards something that you cherish. It's not a special thing that you can say, I'm going to give you bhakti. It's something that you already have. Otherwise, you wouldn't be in the pursuit of truth. You wouldn't be in the pursuit of, making yourself, this, wonderful being and improving your life. Anywhere or any place that you have devotion for, you also have love towards that, or you have attention towards that. So if you ask, what is devotion? Devotion is really just attention. What you give attention to is what you love. What you love is what you cherish. What you cherish is what you find sincerely and dearly important for you. Isn't that true? Okay, so Bhakti Yoga cannot thus be a separate path. It's just an expression of all paths which express themselves through the pursuit of karma, through Karma Yoga, through the pursuit of meditation, through the pursuit of Jnana Yoga, through the pursuit of Ashtanga Yoga, through the pursuit of various yajnas. All of them have one thing in common: bhakti. Thereby, action cannot remove ignorance, because ignorance is opposed to action. So what you have to provide, thus, is knowledge. For example, if you walk into a dark room and it's dark, and somebody says, we need to bring some light into this room, what are you going to do? Are you going to start devoting towards the darkness or towards the light? Close your eyes and start chanting devotional hymns? Are you going to sit down and start to meditate? Are you going to start doing pranayama? Are you start doing push-ups? Are you start going, begging for the darkness to get removed? That's called prayer. What are you going to do? There's only one solution to bring light into that room. Turn on the light switch. There's only one. And so in that same manner, the only solution towards solving this beginningless samsaric cycle that a person finds themselves one life after another is simply just to throw light onto the reality. And that reality is you. So we're just throwing light upon you and your relationship to the world and to Ishvara. Okay, so I want to give you one more example. Suppose why, knowledge is the only solution towards removing suffering. Suppose that you're walking at dawn or dusk, whatever your favorite time is, and your friend is with you, and you're having a really good time. However, both of you forgot to bring the torchlight, so you have to rely on your eyes. And in a nearby proximity, you see a coiled serpent, and you happen to have a fear of serpents. Your friend doesn't have as much fear. Now, your friend remains calm, but you scream. Okay, you genuinely have this kind of a shock. And for you, that scream is warranted, it's real, it's justified, because to you, you're experiencing a genuine fear. Your friend might not be, because they see a little bit more than the serpent. They see a rope, but you see a serpent. And in that moment, what will you do to get rid of that fear? Because for you, your fear is genuine. For your friend, that fear is not there, because they see the real thing. They see the rope. but you see a serpent. What will you do to get rid of that fear? Will you A, run away? B, do push-ups? That would be really weird. Your friend sees you. What are you doing on the ground? I'm just doing push-ups. There's a snake in front of you. C, take a stick and beat that rope. Or for you, it's not a rope, it's a snake, right? Or D, you got any better ideas? Shoot it if you ever happen to be carrying a gun or a shotgun, right? So what will you do? Or A, B, C, D, or E, take a torchlight and illumine the truth of that so-called serpent. Which one? The last one, right? Okay, so this means that when you take the torchlight, that which is intended to remove the fear, then what happens is you shine the light on that which was already there all along, which is the rope. Now, in that moment, when the rope is revealed, can you say that the snake has gone away for you, the one who got scared? Careful. Can you say that the snake has gone away? Suppose you say, oh, for me, the snake went away. Can you? Or whatever, maybe the wire, maybe it was a wire or you know, anything other than the rope. Maybe it was a cloth, maybe it was a wire, maybe it was a snake. The snake went away. Okay, if the answer is no, tell me why.
Because there wasn't a snake in the first place.
Exactly, you understand? To say that the snake went away, there was no snake to begin with. That snake was entirely a projection of my mind based on the ignorance of the rope. What it really was the rope before the snake was there, the rope while the snake was there, and the rope after the so-called snake went away. So it was never that which I imagined it to be in the first place. And for me, it might have been a snake. For somebody else, it might have been a wire. And so for me to say the snake went away, it's entirely based on something that wasn't there to begin with, because everyone else saw a rope, but I saw a snake. So then to whom does ignorance belong? To everyone or to you? To one person? It belongs to one single person. So this means that while the world is as it is, it's like a rope, the world is just fine. What the person does then is, owing to their own ignorance that belongs to their buddhi, they look at this very world, which is as it is just Ishwara's creation, and then they impute their own stuff, and then they say, you know, the world is going through a hard time, and now this year, 2026, the world is suddenly in a much better state. But the world was neither in a better nor a worse state. It was just in a state of what the world is. And thereby, to say that the world is going through a hard time or going through, you know, this and that is really just your own imputation. Because then you have to question, what are you referring to? Are you referring to one single event, someone that's happening in one part of the world? And on the basis of that, you're now painting the entire world is going through a hard time? You understand? So this means the person has to look at their impressions. You look at your ideas. Where are you imputing your ideas upon? And then why are you imputing those ideas? And not only why are you imputing those ideas, perhaps they make you comfortable. Perhaps you've been doing that for a long time. Perhaps culture has told you. Perhaps that's how you've always thought. But the second question, more important, is it really there to what I'm imputing? Is the so-called bad state of affairs, is that really bad? Is it really good? And what does good and bad mean? So this means that you can still operate in this world and call things whatever you want to call them, but at the same time, there's a responsibility to ask yourself, to what degree is this true? Okay? Otherwise, if you just keep on saying that this is how it is, this is how it is, then you keep on building the snake up where the snake is not even there to begin with. For instance, suppose you go to an art gallery and you see a painting and you're convinced this is what the painting represents, okay? And you say this is, you know, like there's a lot of joy there, there's a lot of curiosity there, but somebody else looks at the same painting and they say, I don't see that. I see a facade. You know, they're all just pretending. They're just trying to trick that little man over there. They're just putting on a mask. Okay. And then you go, wow. So I was totally in my world, and yet somebody else was right alongside with me, and they saw something completely different. Okay. Therefore, in chapter 4.37, because of all these reasons, that action cannot remove ignorance, devotion cannot remove ignorance, and meditation cannot remove ignorance, Krishna then says, the fire, what can? The fire of knowledge, he says, reduces all actions to ashes. Another way to understand this is knowledge reduces the need for actions, for all actions to know the truth. So this means that for the longest time, you thought you need to put an action into the field, but what it says here is, no, you don't. You just need to see what is. I just need to see the rope as it truly is. There's nothing that I can do on that rope to see the rope. I just need to remove my veils and then see it for what it is, okay? And this is what the next verse is going to confirm. Verse 42. Tasmad ajnana sambhutam khristam jnana sinatmanaha chitvainam samshayam yogam atishto tishta bharata.
Therefore, Bharata, Arjuna, slaying with the sword of knowledge this doubt about the self, which is born of ignorance, which is rooted in the mind, get up and take to yoga, karma yoga.
So he says the sword of knowledge, jnanasina. In other words, where do all these disciplines end? And as we just said, they end at knowledge. So all actions ultimately end at knowledge. Can you apply any action without knowledge of what you're doing? No, it's just a useless action. Can you apply meditation without knowledge of what you're doing? No, then it's a fruitless meditation. Can you apply devotion without knowing to what you're devoting to? No, because then your devotion is just fruitless. So all pursuits ultimately require knowledge for that pursuit to have any real fruitfulness. Okay, thereby, where do all of these pursuits, all these disciplines that you're doing left and right for your entire life, where do they all lead to ultimately? Knowledge. Okay, jnana sina, the sword of knowledge. And what is this knowledge? That all that is here is divinity, and there are, they're just forms with names, but ultimately behind these forms and name, it is one divinity. By the way, did you ever wonder where in Ramayana, where when Rama shot one of the 10 heads of Ravana, how his head grows back? Did you ever wonder what the symbolism of that is? Right? He shoots one head, another head pops up. He shoots 5 heads, again, he grows 10 heads. He shoots 9 heads, again, 10 heads grow. So he's always got 10 heads. What do you think these 10 heads mean? What is the most stubborn thing that comes back? Let me ask you that. Doesn't leave unless you cut it at the root.
That is ego.
Okay, so, but he's got 10 different heads. So how about this? What if I say to you, suppose you're carrying 10 different perspectives and they're all incorrect. They're all, right, distorted in some way. They're all 10 snakes. Then when you cut one snake, what will the other 9 do? They will produce the 10th. If you cut 5 of them, what will those other 5 do? They will give birth to 5 new distortions. So as long as you're carrying distortions in your life, then when you cut them, the fact that you got more distortions, they eventually give rise to more distortions. Until you cut it at the root, more distortions keep on rising, which is why Rama had to cut it at the root. Only then all 10 went away. They could no longer come back. A distortion, a wrong kind of thinking in your life, it somehow creeps, doesn't it? It finds its way and it sort of just creates this new narrative in your life where it becomes the new default, doesn't it? And it's so subtle that it just catches you. Like one day you're like, I'm back in a false narrative. I'm back in a judgment mode. I'm back in, a mode of saying how things, assuming how things are. For instance, somebody tells you something, and then you don't tell the facts, but instead you assume what they meant and you tell that to the other person. This is a common error. And one of the greatest things that my teacher ever told me was this: stick to the facts. When reporting what happened, stick to the facts. Because what happens often is when we see something, then we look at that and then we assume what it means and then tell a different story. And the other person gets this different story and they get something totally different from the original facts. Do you know what I'm talking about? Okay. So she said, stick with when you are in an argument or a debate. Then how do you come out of that debate or argument? This is something that I always wanted to know. The answer is simple. Stick with the facts. What happened? What I'm going through, what I'm feeling, what I saw, what I heard. The moment you add your own interpretation and you put that into the mix, it already distances you away from the reality. So the more assumptions that I give about what happened, about what I heard, about what I saw, the farther away I am from Ishvara Srishti. Okay? The closer I am towards the snake, the farther I am from the rope. Thereby, this discipline of knowledge cuts ignorance at the root, where you can no longer look at yourself as one small individual, right, trying to make it big in this world. And thereby, this ignorance is how is it removed? By the sword, like literally a sword that just cuts the root of ignorance that gives birth to all this small mini sufferings, that pains and distortions that keep on coming back into your life. So until you can be at peace with your identity, with who you are, with death, with life, with what you are as a being, until that moment, new ignorances keep popping up. New little sprouts of little plants start showing up. Thereby, like Rama, cut it at the root with a sword. And when it's cut at the root, no longer can you have another little idea pop up. I'm not good enough, or I need to become someone, or I need to go there to be, or I have to be heard, or I have to be validated, or I have to be seen. All these small things keep on sprouting until you cut it at the roots. Suppose you say, then how do you cut it at the root? We're talking about karma yoga, and karma yoga is asking several questions to yourself. Karma yoga is a way of life. One of the first questions you ask is, what is the bigger picture in this situation? Okay, what is the situation call of me right now? What am I asked for in this situation? What is my role in this? What part do I play here? Is it my right to act, not act, or do something different? To what degree do I act? When do I act? Is it even right to act? Okay. What is the bigger purpose here? What is my intention behind an action? So the more you ask these questions, the more you become sensitive to your own machinery, to your own mechanics, how you work, how you operate, how you make decisions. And the more you know yourself, the better decisions you can make, the more aligned you are to Ishvara Srishti. Now, what happens is, even if you ask yourself these questions and you do come from the right intention, even then, you might not get exactly as intended. You might receive something that's totally opposite that you expected. You might have put the best of your intentions into producing a community or something to, inspire people. And even then, with all the right questions you've asked, you might not get exactly what you intended. And thereby you have to have a certain kind of a composure when that happens. And that composure is what we call, it is an opportunity for me to now ask, what's next? This has happened. What's next? What will I do? Without which, what else can you do? Complain? Blame? Right? So this means that unless I have a fallback on what happens to me, then the mind will default back to the old. Now, chapter 4 title, to close this off, we said is Jnana Karma Sannyasa Yoga, which means renunciation of action through knowledge. Are we talking about physical renunciation? Like physical distancing oneself away from things? No. What kind of renunciation are we talking about? Mental. In other words, changing your relationship to things. That is called mental renunciation. So there's no need to physically go away. It's just coming to see things in a different light. Okay. Now, chapter structure. Chapter 1 was Arjuna's sorrow. Chapter 2 was Sankhya Yoga, knowledge. So what comes after sorrow? What do I have to do? I need to look into the matter. Looking into the matter, chapter 3, what follows? Karma Yoga. What is Karma Yoga? Turning ordinary actions into mind purifiers. You purify your mind through ordinary actions. In chapter 4, we talked about giving up karma through knowledge. In other words, giving up the sense of doership through knowledge. Okay. Thereby, Krishna finishes and he says, stand up, take to Karma Yoga, and act in the light of the knowledge. Another way you can say is, get up, take to the knowledge, and act in the spirit of Karma Yoga. Another way you can say is, get up and perform Karma Yoga by the help of self-knowledge. Another way you can say is, get up, study self-knowledge, and get on with your life. Another way you can say is, get up, get on with your life through the lens of self-knowledge.
I just wondered, in the book that I've been reading, I know you know about this book, of course. It says the yoga of renunciation of action in knowledge at the end of this chapter 4. Could you explain that?
Yeah,
Maybe I just kind of missed it.
Sure. So renunciation of action in knowledge. So through the light of knowledge, you see, you have to first ask who does the action, right? The body and the mind does the action, doesn't it? Bunch of cells, your brain, your limbs, your finger. So there are different components in your body that do actions. So you're coming to see what exactly is doing an action. Is it really you, or is it something that's, just a bunch of components put together? Limbs and cells and as I said, brain and thoughts and emotions, all of that together is performing an action. So what is performing an action? Is it you, or is it your body and your mind? You have to analyze that. Because if I say to you, find me a doer in you, what exactly is doing? Because that's what action is performed. Action is always together with a doer. So find me a doer in you. Can you find it? Like, what is doing? A finger is doing? Is your muscle doing? Is your bone doing? Is your brain doing an action? Which cell of the brain is doing an action? And a cell is just an atom, right? Which atom is doing an action? So can you find me a single doer, pinpoint that doer in you? Is thought doing an action? And which thought is it? Because if there was one universal thought that's doing an action, that thought will always have to be there to an action to come afterwards. But you cannot find one single component that guarantees a doer every single time. It's just a series of components, like lightning strikes right now. Suppose you're there chilling out, relaxing, and suddenly, bang, lightning strikes. And what happens? You just get up, right? You just jolt. Now, what did that? Did you decide? Did you go, okay, now that the lightning has struck, I'm now going to jolt and make a scene out of it? Or there was a series of sounds, a series of chemicals, a series of, all sorts of activity, and all of that together made Carrie jolt out of her seat. So the point is, when you renounce action in knowledge, you're really just saying, finding the relationship between I and action. What's the relationship between I and that one who acts? It is a satya-mithya relationship. Okay, so for example, if I take, the pot and the clay, is the clay doing or is the pot doing? Then you say the pot is doing, the pot is walking, the pot is breaking, the pot is becoming bigger, the pot is becoming smaller, but the clay always remains clay. Therefore, in knowledge, you recognize the truth of who you are, and that is the one who is free of actions. So it is not you who are doing, it is your body and the mind that's doing. It is your series of chemicals and so on, your biology and physiology and psychology. All of that put together is doing. And it just happens to be given to you for 80 years. And the error is then when you say that one who I'm wearing for 80 years is me. That's an error, right? That one who is programmed to respond to a lightning strike, to a loud bang, to the weather, to somebody calling my name, that one is me. That is an error. So that one is to be understood as an incidental reality. Who am I? I am that which is intrinsic to myself, that the awareness in the presence of whom that person, that so-called doer, does whatever they're programmed to do. You see, the error that we make is we look at this body, this instrument, this machine, and we say, this machine is doing, which is fine. That's true, isn't it? That is true. But where's the error? The error is when you attribute that doer and you say, I am doing that. Okay? So that means when you are doing that, then whatever the person is doing becomes my problem, becomes Atma's problem. And so when the body-mind does a thing in this world, it gets a result for itself, like a good result or a bad result, a meritorious or some kind of a papam result. And then you say, okay, so the body has gotten that. I am the body, therefore, who gets that? I also get that. And that is where the suffering comes. See, how do we start out this conversation? We said the source of suffering is ignorance. And ignorance of what? Ignorance of the fact of not being able to discern the difference between myself and the instrument, which is doing and accruing punya and papam all its life. That is the error. So whatever happens to the instrument, to the body and the mind, is happening to me. And that becomes, therefore, another psychological burden that I have to wear. Where in fact, what does Vedanta say? You are absolutely pure, eternally pure. There's nothing that has ever touched you. And that's knowledge, isn't it? That's a matter of knowing. So you're just saying simply, that is a fact. Whether it is true right now for me or not, whether I feel it to be true, it doesn't matter. That's a fact. If I say to you, 1 + 1 = 2, and a child says, I don't believe you, does that negate that 1 + 1 = 2? You see, a fact is always a fact. You cannot argue facts. So when I say to you, you are pure, whether you want to argue that or not, that is something that you have to kind of resolve a little bit. But I'm telling you who you are, a fact. So what the facts are here is that the doer is someone that you are given, endowed for a certain amount of time. And that doer you take care of to the best of your ability. They're given skills. Arjuna doer is called warrior. Carrie doer is called maybe learner. Greg doer can be called programmer. Nicholas doer is good at doing architecture. Silma doer is good at doing building something. So every doer is given a special skill. How many doers are there in this universe? Human beings, we'll say 8 billion. So we have 8 billion specialized doers specializing in doing what they're endowed with. Every doer is given a certain skill, which is okay. The error is when you say, I am that doer. So now the chapter title says renouncing action through knowledge. You're renouncing this erroneous idea that the person who is listening to this, the person who is thinking about this message right now, is you. That's the error. See, even right now, as I'm saying this to you, you're having thoughts about this, aren't you? Where's the error? Thinking that you are having thoughts about this. No. The proper understanding is there is a doer which is made to think these thoughts as a result of Andre speaking. That doer, in the presence of I, its witness, it is revealed to me. We call that Atma Anatma Viveka. Simple distinction between what is doing all its life, what is being born, what is dying, what is living, what is eating, what is thinking, what is not thinking, what is meditating, what is worrying, what is loving, what is kissing, what is sleeping, what is waking up. All of that is what we call Anatma. The presence in whom, the witness of all of that, the unchanging presence, is called Atma, the self. Thereby, the title, Jnana Karma Sannyasa Yoga, renouncing this erroneous idea that the doer is I. In fact, the doer is I, but I am not the doer. We already explained this before. The pot is the clay, but is clay the pot? No, the clay is free of the pot. So therefore, that is the understanding. Don't discourage your body as saying not the self. The not self is also the self. You just have to understand the relationship. The body is I, but I am not the body. The doer is I, but I am not the doer. The thinker is I, but I am not the thinker. The emoter is I, but I am not the emoter. Otherwise, if you just push it aside, then we create what we call a split. I'm pushing aside Anatma as if it's got nothing to do with me. Hey, can you push away the clay from the pot or the pot from the clay? Can you separate them? There's no question of separating anything, just putting things in the right perspective. So when it says renouncing action through knowledge, you're simply getting proper perspective that this body depends on this very awareful presence, but the awareful presence doesn't depend on the body. The doer one day will stop doing. We call that physical death. But the self remains. That's the understanding. The self remains how? As the self. Will the self ever be different from the self that is the self right now? No, because the self is eternally the same. We say Purana, ever new, ancient, never changes. So there will never be a time when you are different from who you are now. Think about that. There will never be a time when you are going to be less or more than you are right now. Now, suppose you're thinking, what do you mean by that? What is thinking that? You or the doer? The doer. Understand? So therefore, what is discriminative inquiry? Constant recognition. What is doing here? What is thinking here? What is emoting? And what is the presence in whom emoting, thinking, and doing is known? That's the inquiry.
Yeah, can I just bring attention to something you just said that clicked for me? Using the word what is doing it as opposed to who really does a great job of reminding you that the mind body is in fact an object, but just another object that appears in you, your awareness, right? So I really like hearing that, like what is doing it, and then who is you.
Yeah, good, good. That distinction works very well. The what is the instrument, and who you can say is the presence in whom that instrument is coming and going, doing and not doing, sleeping and arising, waking, being born and dying. Let's revise chapter 1, 2, 3, 4. So, chapter 1, Arjuna's grief. In fact, Arjuna's grief can be called anyone's grief. In fact, what else is grief than being between two sides, between Yes or a no? Should I marry him or should I not? Should I go there or should I not? For how long should I take a pause? Should I go now? Should I go later? Should I work here? Should I change my job? Should we go out? Should we stay? Should we have this food? Should we have that food? Even food can become a great commotion, can't it, at a restaurant? 10 minutes later, people are still discussing what to eat. It's just a matter of putting, it's all going to go in your stomach anyway. 15 minutes have gone by and now someone wants to go to the toilet to come back. Have you decided? No, we haven't even, we're waiting for you to come back. Okay, so any kind of, commotion, you can say, is between two things, two polarities, and you have to figure out which polarity you want. So as long as polarities remain, then you're in this constant push and pull. Now, Arjuna is afraid of creating consequences, as we all are. If you choose this food at a restaurant, then what if there's a better, what if it's not tasty? You went through that experience? If I choose that food, it's something new. Let's try something new. But at the back of your mind, you're thinking, yeah, but, it's better to try something that I've already done before. It's safe. I don't know what I might get. So you're in a constant kind of tug of war here. And Arjuna is between the tug of war of the good and the bad, the side that it's there to, create some disturbance in a society, and the side that is, relatively composed, relatively clear. So we create these two scenarios. I'm either a winner or I'll be a loser. But as we know, life is a lot more complex than that, isn't it? It gives you nuances. So you have to first figure out which side to take. But suppose you take one side over the other. What are you thinking now? Suppose Arjuna goes to the mountain and he's on the mountain and he's now thinking what? What if I stayed? And then Arjuna stays and he's thinking now what? What if I go to the mountain? So everywhere that you find yourself in, you're always thinking about the grass is green on the other side. This is human nature. So that means you can't ever find a perfect solution. That's the source of grief. Because every solution shows you that there could have been two more, at least three more. So you're like, what if I was always, what if only I did that? And then suppose you were able to split yourself into three. Okay, now you're able to go to Hawaii, Bahamas, and where else you want to go? Mauritius. Okay, so there's three of you now, and all of the three of you are enjoying three places at the same time. However, the three of you now have so much data that the three of you now say, oh, I wish there was four of us. And you realize, even if there's three of me, now I want four of me. So like this, Arjuna is going through this tug of war, and he's going through three basic conflicts, and everyone goes through this. I want to know, I want to exist, and I want to be happy. Or I want to exist, I want to be happy, and I want to know. Suppose you exist. Who wants to exist? You put your hand up. I want to exist. Okay. But suppose I say to you, you are going to exist and you're going to know that your life is empty and meaningless. You exist, right? You just put your hand up. We all want to exist. But then I say, do you want to know? Do you want to know about things? And you also put your hand up. Okay. But now I say to you, do you want to exist and know that your life is meaningless? Look at that. You said you want to exist, you want to know, but you don't want to exist and be in a state of knowing that my life is empty. Okay. Suppose that you exist and you're happy, but you don't know that. Does anyone want that? So you want to exist, you want to know, and what do you want to know about yourself? That you're small, incomplete, or that you are full, whole, and complete. Understand? You always want to exist. You always want to know. You cannot stand not knowing things. Isn't that true? We all want to know things, and we also want to be happy in our existence. Therefore, Arjuna knows that I exist, but if I kill all of these people, how will I exist? What will I know? I will know that I've done a great misdeed. I can't live like that. What I want to know is that after having done this, that the society will be happy, that I will be happy, that all of us will be happy. That's what I want. But he cannot come to see that. So thereby, this is the grief that's causing Arjuna to go into chapter 2, where Krishna says, you see, Arjuna, the wise don't grieve. They don't grieve because they see the true nature of these beings. They see the true nature, what is really real. They see what is truly real is that which is permanent, it's unborn, and it's eternal. Now, let me look at this word, don't grieve. Okay. What do you think don't grieve means? The wise people don't grieve. If you look at this literally, does this mean they're emotionless? Does this mean they have no sense of empathy towards anyone? Does this mean that they are, the kind of people that are just completely stoic and there's no response to anything? If you look at this word, don't grieve directly, that's what you might interpret. But that is not what it means. You have to be a little bit more flexible because life isn't just black or white. So don't grieve means that you see something that another person doesn't see, and that holds you in a certain way. It gives you a certain kind of composure. So what is it that you would have to see that would hold you in a certain composure? What is it? What is it that you have to see about yourself right now that will cause you to be relatively, strong carrying yourself in life? What is it about yourself that you would have to see that you didn't see before? You would have to see your nature, who you are, what you are, where do you belong, what place you have in this world, what purpose you're born for. All of these things you would have to know. Okay. Thereby, the wise person doesn't grieve because they are clear. They're clear with their purpose, with their intention, with their goals, with what is this world about? What am I about? What are you about? Where is my time best used? Where is my time not best used? They're simply lucid where and what and how. Simple as that. And that requires time. Time to think, time to inquire, time to get to know yourself. Now, to understand that, what happens is the mind is on a roller coaster. It's not able to quite relate to the teaching, so it kind of resists it. It says, no, I'm not eternal. This is all just scriptures. This is what the rishis have said. This is not true about me. So the mind sort of finds these ways to, to extinguish these teachings. Now, what you have to do is you have to give this mind a certain kind of strength. And we call that strength karma yoga. So what is karma yoga? How do you make this mind strong, discerning, and lucid about realities? Or at least preparing it for the knowledge? Well, first of all, we're saying karma yoga is, we said, yoga karmasu kaushalam, which means directly skill in action. However, if you really want to understand what skill in action means, just replace that with samanya dharma. Here's why. When you make a decision, what's an easier thing to do? Something that goes along with your likes and dislikes, or something that is keeping with the larger picture? What is easier by default? Something that's accommodating the people's needs and your needs, or something that's just expedient, fast, and gives instant satisfaction? What's easier? Exactly. So you know the answer. So now, is it a skill to recognize that and to ask instead, what is called of me? What is the right thing to do? What is it that is to be done here? Is that a skill? When the whole world is tempting you to find a way that's expedient and fast and gratifying? Of course, it's a skill. Therefore, Yoga Karma Sukha Shalam is really just putting Samanya Dharma in your life. Asking yourself a simple question, what is the larger impact that my actions are having in this environment? What is required in a given situation? What is asked of me right now? And then whatever it is, doing it whether you feel like it or not. No, I only do things when I feel like it. If you only did things when you feel like it, you would never do anything. When do you ever feel like doing things that are supposed to be done? Out of 10, out of suppose 100%, out of how many of those percent do you truly feel like doing things that need to be done? 10% of the time, 20% of the time, 100% of the time? I doubt it. And the second is Samatvam Yoga Uchyate. This is the second component of Karma Yoga, which means evenness of mind. So even when you are sure of what is required of you, and you have looked at the facts, and you have recognized that doing by my likes and dislikes isn't helping me in the long run, so thereby I will, put a certain sacrifice, I will, kind of compromise, and I will do what needs to be done, even though it may not be that exciting or that pleasant, but I'll still do it. Suppose you say that. Now, even when you do that, the world, you have to understand, isn't designed to accommodate you every single time. Okay, we would like to be accommodated. We would like to be held and rewarded and, kind of given a handshake for doing a good thing. But how often does that happen? It happens rarely, right? So this is not just your experience. This is everyone's experience. So you are dearly putting your efforts into the world, but you feel like you're not quite getting the results that, you would like to have to be acknowledged. And thereby, you need a certain understanding to remain strong. Otherwise, without it, what happens is a person gives up. And I've seen this personally. A person does so much for their family, for somebody else, and one day they just snap and they're like, nobody's giving anything to me, no one's validating me, no one's this, and they just lose it. So this means that you need a certain kind of an understanding that Ishvara is not a personal entity that is, giving you a hard time or that is disliking you. There's no one in this universe that's disliking you. There's no entity in this world that's saying that you're a bad person and that you deserve to go through pain. That is your idea. It doesn't exist. That's an imagination. The point is the laws operate impersonally. That means the laws are made in such a manner that they just have to accommodate the needs of everyone. If you try to accommodate the needs of 8 billion people, would you succeed at that? You see, we can't even accommodate our own needs, let alone the needs of 2 people living in a house. Even that is difficult. That's hard work. Now imagine a being who has to accommodate every single sentient being in the universe. Every ant, every microbe, every animal, every dog, every human being, every child, and has to do it in such a manner that everyone, while they don't get exactly what they want, you get just enough that you don't end your life. That's hard work. So that's really hard work. And so by understanding that my life isn't here to, be constantly happy, because that's not possible, because the universe has to accommodate everyone else also. So naturally, if somebody scores, if you're for France to win in the World Cup and somebody else is in Germany, then how is Ishvara supposed to decide? Because if Germany loses, you got thousands of people who are unhappy, but now France is won. So what does Ishvara have to do? Well, you'll get your punyam today, but tomorrow, if France will lose and then Germany will win. So it has to constantly kind of, keep everything in balance so that people don't go crazy. So that means if you're living in such a world, you cannot possibly expect yourself to be living in this perfect utopian environment. It's a nice thing to imagine as a child, but ultimately you come to realize it's not really, feasible. So what are the 3 topics of chapter 2? The first is, it says, your nature is pure awareness. That's who you are. Then it says to understand that, suppose you haven't understood that, then the way to do that is through the practice of karma yoga. It prepares your mind. Then the third topic of chapter 2 is, now that I've heard about this, this knowledge, can you show me, Krishna, who is wise? How do they sound? How do they walk? How do they think? How do they behave? That's a valid question. And Krishna here says, for the wise person, everything is divinity. Not because moksha is causing to see such, but because they have thought in such a manner for such a long time that they see divinity in all things. They see names and forms, but they see deeper than just names and forms. And so whether their desires are fulfilled or not, that's okay. And there's a statement, I don't remember which verse, it says, the wise person is like an ocean. When the rivers flow in the ocean remains full. When the water evaporates from the ocean still remains full. The wise person is like an ocean. Whether my desires and fancies are fulfilled or not, I am full. I remain full. I don't get too shaken, too moved by that. And so, whereas, for an unwise person, they act out of emptiness. And so to make themselves full, they have to go in the world and add some fullness onto oneself. And that becomes an exhausting journey, doesn't it? Yes, it does. Okay. So the relationship for the wise person is not that they get rid of desires, it's that their relationship to desires changes. That's an important distinction. You're not getting rid of your desires as a wise person, just seeing what desires are keeping with Samanya Dharma and what desires are really just, they don't really have any more usefulness for you. Okay, so you're growing out of these immature desires. Now, chapter 3 talks about karma yoga. But it's interesting, isn't it? Because chapter 2 extensively talked about karma yoga. So now why would chapter 3 have an entire dedicated chapter to karma yoga? It's because it adds one more component to karma yoga. Remember how I said yoga karma sukhaushalam is samanya dharma? Chapter 3 adds swadharma. It's still karma yoga, but it adds one more component called swadharma. And what is this? Every person, including you, has a unique position in this world. And you know different people. And you know different, you find yourself in different situations, don't you? So because you are in different, with different people, different situations at different times, does that not require from you a different response? Yes, it does. So that means you cannot expect to have the same conversations between someone that you consider a friend and someone who's called your boss, or someone that's called your spouse or your children. Every role requires a different set of responses from you. So the world is like that. Wherever you are in, whatever place you are in, that place is calling a different response from you. A slightly different personality, a slightly different conversation. So this means that swadharma is about being flexible with whoever you're with and asking, what is asked of me from my spouse? This is asked from me, so therefore these are my duties. What is asked from me by my boss? This is asked from me, therefore these are my duties. What is asked from me from Vedanta? Practice. So therefore, there is a duty of practice. What is asked of me when I'm spending time alone? Maybe quietude, maybe contemplation. Therefore, let me ensure that is available for me. Okay, so swadharma is a way not only to help yourself, it's also to become a contributor. Because you see, it's very easy to say, suppose in chapter 2, Samanya Dharma, and you stay in self-improvement. That's wonderful, isn't it? But what does chapter 3 do? It says self-improvement, though it is samanya dharma, it's ethical. It's ethical to help yourself. If you stay there, will you ever truly grow? If you just keep on helping yourself? No. Has anyone ever just spent time, I'm sure you have, on yourself for many years, and then something happened where you were required to contribute, you were required to go beyond yourself and start to reach out? How has that changed your relationship to yourself, if at all? Okay, so this means that as long as you keep on helping just yourself, you will only reach a certain level, but you will feel a certain plateau, like I've reached a plateau. Do you know that feeling? Where like I'm stuck, I can't go any further. But something inside you knows there's a lot more potential in me, but it just doesn't want to come out. The reason is because you're missing Swadharma. Swadharma is about recognizing what are my responsibilities towards the world. As long as you just stay within yourself, that responsibility cannot fully flourish, and thereby you cannot fully mature as a human being. Therefore, one of the fastest ways to flourish as an individual is to go beyond yourself. We call that contribution, contributing to a good cause, the world, to your work environment, to your children, to your spouse, going beyond yourself. And so this completes the definition of karma yoga. Now, chapter 4, Krishna says to Arjuna, he is the initiator, that Krishna is the initiator of this knowledge. And this confuses Arjuna, because Arjuna sees that Krishna was born maybe 40 or 20 years ago. But Krishna says, I initiated this knowledge. So how is this possible? And that's when Krishna reveals that he's not talking about himself as a body, he's talking about himself as Ishvara. In this case, as an avatara. An avatara is, as we said, the one who is born, who knows who they are. They don't need to learn, even though they still need to learn the alphabet, they need to, go to the basic school like anyone else. But what's common sense for them, for an avatara, is self-knowledge. Just like when you can have a child who is born, and for them, you just introduce them music, just a little bit of music, and they just start to flourish with it, while all the other kids are struggling. So in that same manner, when you introduce self-knowledge to an avatara, while everyone else is going, this is what? What is this formless reality? To an avatara, they're just like, oh, okay, easy, simple. Now, for the rest of us, it's difficult, but we can figure it out. It just requires a lot more time. So you can say an avatara is born with a vasana of self-knowledge, even though it's not a vasana, it's just a natural understanding. So thereby, Krishna is an avatara. And he has come, he says to Arjuna, to teach knowledge without any distortions and to restore righteousness. What is the right thing to be done? And in what manner? And he finally says in chapter 4, to assimilate this knowledge, you need yajnas. Yajnas means spiritual practices, and such as speaking the right words, looking at your responses, reframing your understanding of the world, taking deliberate effort to grow, to think differently, food disciplines such as fasting, if that is your thing, charity, Ashtanga yoga we spoke about. These are all disciplines given to you, whichever ones that you find okay. He's not saying do them all. He's just saying, here's an option. Which option is good and right for you? That's your yajna. And he ends by saying that knowledge, self-knowledge, is the best of yajnas. I would like to ask you, if there's any concept or idea that you found that touched you, that was impactful, that was something new that you heard or for the first time, or that had an effect upon you so far?
During one of the classes, I had asked you a question, how to improve my bhakti. and you had answered that be brutally honest. These three words have given me a lot of meaning to my spiritual practices. That being brutally honest about myself, my intentions, my thoughts is a wonderful guide to self improvement.
That's
So I
wonderful.
want to really thank you for that.
That's wonderful. So in other words, just getting to know yourself, stepping outside the culture that you were taught in, what your parents told you, just saying, what do I want? What is my calling? What, in the light of this knowledge, what is something that, I need in this moment? So you're just really reconnecting with this individual.
Along the same lines with bhakti, I happen to also have that strong belief that it's not at all a separate path. And the more I realize it's not a belief, but the more that I increase my knowledge, the more bhakti automatically increases, to such that, like, when I see a tree and I recognize that it's beautiful, then I have a moment where I realize that I'm seeing myself, and it's even more beautiful in that. The bhakti happens as a byproduct of knowledge rather than this separate thing.
What you said about being careful not to build a snake really, really impacted me. I really needed to hear that.
Okay.
Just not reinforcing things that, the perspective of, just these old patterns, looking at the world a certain way, that is just only reinforcing what it is I'm trying to undo, So that was very, very powerful. Thank you so much.
I was talking to somebody in prison the other day, and I found myself saying to him that he should remember that he wasn't his body and that he wasn't his mind, but that inside him, somewhere, there was a part of him that was eternally pure and unaffected by actions in this world. And I've been fretting over saying that to him for several days and wondering if I did the right thing. But you spoke words today to us that were almost identical, and it's really meant a lot to me.
For me, the big thing was when you explained that Bhakti-Yoga is essentially a human construct. And the way you explained that just hit home for me, because there's you see a lot of Bhakti-Yoga. And sometimes, for, I guess, the rational mind, it begs the question, how much of this is essential versus, whether is it a means to an end? And the way you explained that today, it just clarified a lot for me. So thank you very much.
When you mentioned about the breaking down of objects into atoms and subatomic atoms and everything into minute levels, that just I just got blown away by that concept. So that it's helping me to view everything in that aspect, wherein I can take this knowledge even to a busy shopping mall, where it's full of marketing strategies where your minds are getting pulled. Even that point, I can use this, so I can use this, and my desires are regulated and focused for what I'm here, for why I'm here. I'm able to pass it on to my kids as well.
Oh, good. Lucky kids.
Yeah. I've got 2 children, they are in teenagers. So it's very useful for them if I say all this. They are like, it's helping them even to look at it that way. So I really thank you for giving that, sharing that knowledge with us. Thank you.
My teacher also said, we're not praying to a bunch of atoms, by the way, we're praying to Ishvara. So
Yeah, even the mentioning of Ishvara, you should be able to see Ishvara in a door handle, even in a toilet seat. The way you're brutally honest with how you should see things, how the perspective completely shifts. It's not only in the deity that you're looking, everything is, even the cabinet that the door handle of the cabinet turns into the very intelligent and the awareness. And everything is us. That was what turned the perspective of my way of looking at it. And it is the knowledge that gives you the moksha. not some state, not that you have to go from one level to another level. Or I don't know how to thank you. This is completely shift of my perspective. So my humblest level of gratitude, I don't know how to repay this. Thank you so much.
By living it. Okay. That's all. That's all. Thank you, Hema.
Yes, hello, Andre. I would like to know from you when you say we have this, the wise person sees divinity in everything. So, how do we do that in our day-to-day life, even in people who are not good, even in people whom we like? We have likes and dislikes, right? People whom we don't like, people who get angry, people whom we are not tolerating, or of course we have to improve ourselves, but how do we start by seeing divinity in everyone, in everything?
Sure. Well, you can take it like, as children, we have like our group of people, and there's like a group of people that we don't like. And so we only see the goodness in our group of people. And then when you look at the group of people that we don't like, we see them as, all these labels. So this is why Vedanta first says you have to reframe those things that you don't look at pleasantly, and you have to find some what we call pratipaksha bhavana, something positive about them, which is true, right? So not everyone's completely bad. People have a series of bad moments, tempers, but in other cases with other human beings, they're very good people. You just don't see that. So it takes some effort to look at someone that you don't like, that you got something against, or a politician, or someone that's local, whatever it is, and just takes a moment to say, this person, the intelligence, the Ishvara is healing their cuts, their bruise, is the same order that's healing my cuts, my bruise. They're breathing the same air as I'm breathing. They're eating the same food that I'm eating. They also want to be happy as much as I want to be happy. They're looking for the truth. They're also confused. I'm also confused. So we're both just trying to figure things out in our own way. They might be a little bit behind in some areas than you. They might be ahead in other areas than you. And you're just bringing a little bit of perspective about that this person is a lot more than how you see them. And that, I tell you, it takes some effort, because the brain likes to choose the path of least resistance. It looks at something and says, okay, so I put a label upon your forehead. I am happy. I now go and do my business. But if you leave that, if you just leave that alone, what you've really done is you've distanced yourself away from Ishvara. You've chosen to exclude that person and say, that is not Ishvara. Everything else is Ishvara. But the vision is reminding us that it requires to have a general, not like, some magical, you need to like see divinity at all times, but at least to help yourself to see more divinity than yesterday. If you can see 1% more divinity today than yesterday, you are on the right track. That's all that's being asked. So all these big things like, see divinity all at once, please let this go. This is all utopian dream. Progress is slow and deliberate. Day by day, brick by brick, that's all you need to worry about. One brick at a time. And within 2 or 3 years, you are, it's like a compound interest. It just keeps on building and building. So focus on the small improvements rather than these ginormous, massive leaps. Om Purnamadav Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Avashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.